into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America.
All right, workers, rise up. It's possibly one of the biggest strikes in recent history, maybe happening. Holy shit. Is it miners? Is it factory workers? People swinging large hammers at pipes in that factory where Freddy Krueger pulls you to in your dreams, where smoke and steam is flying everywhere? No, it's like gophers and stuff. Do you work in film? Is your job to do a lot of labor that goes unseen on films, like getting coffee for crazy egomaniacal people, or stitching together scripts, or editing? Well, guess what? You are the new Vanguard. No, that's probably not it.
You're the Vanguard.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about the Freddy Krueger factory.
I just watched.
Whoa, same. Last night I watched Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe, yeah, he coordinated this somehow.
Because it looks like a factory that just makes flames.
Yeah.
Or just striped shirts.
I was wondering this the whole time I was watching it, which is, why does he always bring you to this factory? Like, it's unexplained, but I think it's the factory. So the backstory of Freddy Krueger is that he was a gardener at a school. Spoiler alerts, by the way, for this million-year-old movie. But he was also a pedophile.
He's also a pedophile.
In the town found out he was a pedophile. They chased him down the street into a factory, and then he locked himself in, and they couldn't get him.
Set it on fire. And that's why he looks like that.
And that's why he's burned, and that's also why he lives in your dreams in like an industrial video or whatever. Like, honestly, take the scenes from Freddy Krueger where he's like killing you in the factory and change the music to just like, everybody dance now. Wah, wah, wah. It looks just like the 90s.
What
person
the fuck?
dancing in front of the silhouette of a fan.
I think
like the Marky Mark video. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I think the factory thing is actually a commentary on deindustrialization, because it came out in the 80s, so that's what
I think they're trying to say that factories are for pedophiles.
Yeah,
definitely. Freddie he voted for Trump because he works in a factory, and
he's the first Reagan Democrat.
Yeah. Anyway,
absolutely.
What are we talking about today? What is IATSE, and why are they possibly going on strike soon? What's the story?
First of all, welcome to the show. IATSE is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technicians, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States, its territories, and Canada, or IATSE for short.
Cool.
Are you in the Pacific Islands making costumes for YouTube? You should join IATSE.
And the story seems to be, if I am understanding, that conditions on the level of that work where you're getting paid minimum wage increasingly got worse, especially given the shift to streaming and the last year of pandemic and et cetera, crisis and so on and so forth, resulting in the demand for collective action.
It's my understanding it's always been bad, but that it did suddenly get worse with COVID stuff because it like stopped and started the production schedules. But we'll get into it.
People were risking their lives, as we will learn from our guests, our union member guests.
Well, that's what we're talking about today. And yes, let's intro the show. I'm Jake Flores. Alex Patak is here.
Rise up.
Anders Lee is here.
Anders Lee here.
Rise up.
Rise up.
Rise up.
We're talking about film today. IATSE, theatrical, stage work, PAs, all the like.
The silver screen.
Yeah. How the fuck does this David Simon thing
Anders
factor into this?
Well,
why do you hate David Simon so much?
It's a related sector. A lot of people have been sort of, the film and television industry is heavily unionized, but there are a bunch of different unions, and IATSE is for, the people we just described. But there are other unions, such as the WGA, which just had elections recently. WJE,
Writers Guild of America.
That's right, and they represent writers. And David Simon, friend of the show, has
from The Wire.
That's right, the guy who wrote The Wire and Homicide: Life on the Street. He's a WGAE member, and there was just a big election that they had, and an actual friend of the show, another David, Bradley Eisenberg, was filling me in on this because he's sort of adjacent to the union. And basically, as we'll talk about, IATSE is a very big union. So this is going to be a huge deal if they go on strike. Tens of thousands of people. WGAE, I don't know why I have such trouble saying that, is 6,400 people. And 1,700 of those just joined within the past couple of years. Why is it such a small number? Because it's just people who have made it in screen and television writing, which is not a lot of people. So the big hot button issue there is, do we expand? And recently they have been doing that. They've been saying, you know what, writers comes in all kinds of stripes. They write in all kinds of mediums. It shouldn't just be film and TV writers.
Stripes like Freddy Krueger. Go on.
That's right.
So on and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it should be digital media writers. So they've been organizing newsrooms, right? And David Simon doesn't like this. He thinks that's bad because newsroom people should join the newspaper guild. They should join a different union. What is the reason for that? He just thinks they should be separate. He can't really explain why. He thinks it's going to wear the union thin. But again,
that motherfucker worked at a newspaper. He made season 5 of The Wire about it.
He's addicted to the newspaper.
Yeah, but he thinks that should be a different thing. He's like, go join another union. And it's very much a purely a sort of superiority thing, right? The television and film writers see themselves as different from news people. But if you're going to have a successful union that has a larger capacity, you need more members. And that's what people have been saying. And that is what so this is very funny. There were two competing slates. There was his slate, the inclusion and experience slate, and the solidarity slate, which included other cool people like Josh Gondelman, Kim Kelly, people like that who are like, let's expand. We need more money. We need more members. It's as simple as that. We need more density. Let's organize digital media. Because like, where's the dividing line? Where does like news web content become television versus like streaming, as we'll get into, has changed the whole game. And so his slate lost, but they won the presidency of WJAE, and he won his seat. But the solidarity slate won a majority. So now David Simon is going to have to sit on a council with a bunch of people he's been calling, a pulchritudinous fuckwat on Twitter for the past couple of years.
Because he'll fight with anyone. If you're listening at home, it is very important that you understand 2/3 of this podcast is blocked by David Simon on Twitter.
Oh, so yeah.
They cannot access his statements except through me or secret alternative accounts.
Yeah, I have a burner account open right now so we can read David Simon because he's insane and he's one of those stupid old white guy libs that curses at you with a thesaurus and thinks that it makes a really great impact when he calls you a twat waffle of space.
You son of a bitch. Thank you for bringing us Idris Elba.
Yeah, I know, right? Crazy. Yeah, okay, cool. That makes sense. I think the WGAE should pay a better WAGE. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
That's what I think about all this.
This is such great radio.
Okay, so that's the setup to what that all of that is to say that was a setup for a Twitter meltdown that we're going to read that he's having. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah, so this was a little bit ago, I think before the election, after which he's going to have to sit around on a council with a bunch of people he has publicly ridiculed and who just embarrassed himself trying to argue with.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read this sort of going backwards through all the because he's doing the thing where he quote tweets our friend David Bradley Eisenberg a bunch of times. So the first thing that happens is David Simon says, and that raw fact will be true no matter who wins the election. Address this now with all of us choosing the best path or don't. But if you don't, it's coming nonetheless. And then Eisenberg goes, David, thank you for negating your distant and hypothetical argument. One of the first things my journo shop did when we got recognized was stand up for screenwriters. What empirical evidence do you have for any of your predictions? David Simon, you want it to be the one way, but it's the other way. And unless this is addressed by all of us now, by a solution on which we can all agree, there will not be a solvent and separate WGAE.
It's like you're fighting the Sphinx.
Yeah. And then David Eisenberg went, if you lose, go to WGAW and nobody follows you. Will you quote your own show to yourself? Oh, I guess he was quoting one of his own shows. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's if you think it's one, you think it's one way, but it's the other way. Which is great, excellent line, of course.
From The Wire.
That's from The Wire, and he's quoting his own work. Someone asked him,
"Sucks."
Yeah,
right.
You're like if you got into a fight with George Lucas, and he was like, "Use the Force."
That is Dirty Dancing Havana Nights.
How about Dirty Dancing Havana Syndromes? Everyone,
hey,
hello. It's never been done. If you're listening at home, don't do it because it is our idea, and we're gonna do it. So you can't do it.
All right. Well, is there anything more to this David Simon thing, or are we just having a good laugh at him being?
We're just having a good laugh. Yeah. Long story short, better, more members the better. The fucking UAW is organizing grad students, so I think the WGA is going to be okay if a website or two joins, or a bunch of websites. That would be a very good thing. And and just to explain, the threat here was that he was going to leave WGA East and join West. And so far, he hasn't done that. And again, he's going to be trapped in a room with these people trying to hammer out contracts and negotiations and things.
That's right. With unions, when it comes to new members, much like cats in the winter, they're cold, you're cold. Let them in.
Yeah, there you go. This reminds me of something that happened in Texas when I was trying to get comedians to be included into this. Like, it wasn't even a union. It was just this fund that you can get health insurance for being a musician with. And they totally pulled the same shit where they were like, no, why don't you just make your own? And you're like, fuck you, man. Like, who does this even serve if it's not actively trying to include more people, you know?
Look, just because you made The Wire, you're trying to make my life more difficult.
Yeah.
Well done. And with that said, it's time to go to our patented experts of the upcoming strike. What will be the stakes? Upcoming possible strike.
Before you listen to this interview we did, you must understand there was a buzzsaw going off in the background behind Alex Patak because someone's sawing a tree down. That's what that sound is.
I think they're working on a porch.
I guess I just assumed, but there's a buzzsaw happening. Ignore it. It's just the sounds of labor.
No, it's part of the theme of the show. It's
there on purpose, and there's nothing we can do about it. Just enjoy the saw. And with no further ado, enjoy the saw. And with the sound of the buzzsaw, we begin our labor interview. We're here now with Neda Devarpanah, a writer and writer's assistant at the local 871 in the IATSE union. Neda, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. We just wanted to cover some basics of what is happening and what to feel about it. Question number one, how do you say the name of this union?
That's a good question. You know, I've heard all different kinds of pronunciations of this. I say IATSE. I've heard people say IATSE. I've heard people say YAHTZEE, like the game. So it's kind of like dealer's choice, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
I like IATSE because it makes it sound like sort of like an update to iRobot, where YAHTZEE is a robot in the future and is on trial for something. Okay, there's a YAHTZEE robot.
I thought I liked Yahtzee because I thought it was a bunch of like dice rolling gambler types were unionizing, which I think would be a cool concept.
Oh, what if
I really
professional
understand
gamblers unionized? Actually, Vegas would love that probably because they would go on strike, and
Right.
then the casinos would be like, "Cool, don't come back."
And that's one of the things we're going to get around to. But what are some basics we need to know about this strike? Who is striking? What do they want? How should we feel about it at home?
Yeah, I mean, if the demands are not met and the strike is not successful, we might all have to take up professional gambling. But aside from that, so basically many different below the line Hollywood workers are represented by IATSE all over the country. This is specifically a fight between several West Coast locals and the AMPTP for pretty reasonable demands, I would say, like a living wage for the minimum wage for all workers, reasonable working conditions. Like, for example, there's a lot of workers who are working 18 plus hour days with almost no notice in between when their last call time ends and when their next call time begins. So they don't have adequate rest and, things like that. Like, they're just asking for like the basic necessities that a worker would need to do their job and to have like an adequate work-life balance and to be able to pay the bills. And so far, the negotiations have been ongoing for some time, but recently we all voted yes on the strike authorization. I think it was like 99% yes, and try getting 99% of people to say yes to anything.
Yeah.
So this is,
I can't.
We are, yeah. So the biggest thing is just that even if, you're one of the lucky ones and you're not like directly implicated by any of this, we all understand that we're in this together. This is all the same fight.
And when you say below the line workers, what does that mean for people maybe who are not involved in the business?
Sure. So it refers to really any workers who are not like, above the line, below the line kind of refers to like, writers, directors, actors would be like above the line, and, the people who are like making the decisions, producers. Below the line, and, IATSE represents everyone from writers' assistants and script coordinators, which is like my department in writers' rooms, to production accountants, to people who work in hair and makeup. It's really basically everybody who makes a production possible.
Key grips, best boys, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting that like writing is below the line, but
not credited writers. Is that correct? So
yeah, it's interesting. So the writers who are, the writers of the episode are represented by the Writers Guild. And then the writers' assistants who are also in the writers' room, and the script coordinators who are looking at every draft of the script and make it possible to have, every episode of the show, are represented by IATSE. So that's a bit of a divide within the same workplace.
Yeah,
and I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much creative work a lot of the writers' assistants end up doing. I've had friends who have done that, and I don't want to name names here, get anyone in trouble.
David Simon,
not David Simon, but there's a, let's just say, creator who relies very heavily on. I mean, there's a lot who rely very heavily on writers' assistants who just write entire scripts, and they don't get any credit, don't get any compensation, and without, maybe getting yourself in trouble by exposing anybody. Will this strike, does that have any bearing on that situation? Possibly getting writers' assistants more credit, or just a clearer delineation of the work that you're supposed to be doing?
I feel like in general, when people are more empowered economically, which is, I think, what the biggest, one of the biggest fights that the strike involves, I think then people will have more control over their own careers, which might lead to that. Like, for example, one of the biggest things with people in my local, people who do what I do, is just that since we don't earn a living wage for the work that we do, we are not empowered to focus on our craft so much. Like, we have to focus on getting that next gig. And so I feel like if, the negotiations are successful and we don't have to strike, or if we do strike and that's successful, then you'll see a lot of people maybe transitioning into, in the case of writers' assistants and script coordinators, maybe to join the Writers Guild. Maybe they'll have the time and the finances to be able to take time off and work on their scripts, which currently a lot of us don't have.
Right. When getting guests for this, and this may be controversial to say, but the one piece of advice I received was that grips are not funny. Do you have any comment on that?
Wow, shots fired.
There's a lot of when I've been on sets, I've experienced a lot of sort of like gallows humor and like dark humor. So if you're into that, I feel like you might find them funny just because they're working such long hours and they're doing such grueling work a lot of the time. So they have to find ways to entertain themselves.
Film is in this weird place because the kind of like, if you're on a big shoot, the habitat that develops kind of feels like you're in a high school or something, because you spend all of your time there. Like the regular thing people come to expect for an 8-hour workday is not in the question. It's not even like up for debate on the strike if it happens now. We're just asking, from what I've seen, the demand is to go from 8-hour turnaround, which is from when you get off work to when you have to be back at work, to a 10-hour turnaround. Like that's the big ask. Like people aren't asking to like get what every other job has just due to the nature of the industry.
So it's an extra 2 hours. Wow.
It would be huge though. I mean, that's an hour to get home and then you can sleep hopefully the correct amount.
Yeah, it's really not even that much. And it's so funny because I was watching Yahoo finance, like a video, and I just looked up the YAHTZEE strike in YouTube and watched some weird coverage on some heavily biased news outlet before this or whatever, and they're like their way of explaining it was very much not from the point of view of the worker. It was from the point of view of the consumer. It was like, so tell us, are our movies going to get made so we can watch our little movies in bed during our off time or whatever?
When is the next Squid Game?
But they talked about how the conflict is between Ayatsi and this thing called the AMPTP.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
AMPTP. Basically, what is the AMPTP? It's the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. So this is the people who are calling the shots and making the decisions, and they're the people who control basically everything that we're talking about, like the terms of our employment and how much we earn for the work that we do. And it's really like, this is a fight between workers and bosses, in the way that most fights are. And I think I'm actually glad that you brought that last point up about how people are talking about this from the point of view of the consumer, because that was the big fight during the pandemic when so many productions had to continue even before we had a vaccine, when workers, especially on set, were put in literally life-threatening situations just so that people would get their shows when they expected them. So I think that's another reason why this is happening now, because people are finally like, I'm not going to take this anymore.
Yeah, I noticed that everyone was put back to work in June of 2020, which seems like awful early considering the scope of the entire pandemic and everything. And it seemed to be justified on the basis of, because of the way things have shifted to streaming, it's required that we just squeeze everyone this much harder. But I guess something I thought was interesting reading about this was that it seems like way back when the streaming stuff started, there was a question in the air of when this eventually becomes the standard, streaming over, physical media and stuff like that. Are we eventually going to set regulations in place? And it hasn't really happened yet. And then COVID catalyzed a lot of this stuff, especially the jump to streaming being super normalized with movies coming out on HBO Max and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm asking is how's the pandemic play into all this?
Yeah, that's another important point too, to bring up the streaming point, because, with people's reliance on these streaming services, the question of, workers being compensated accordingly, where they used to be compensated with residuals and things like that, that's not really happening with streaming. It's really, that's even a fight that the Writers Guild is having. It's how much are we being compensated for the work that we do when people, watch things over and over again on Netflix, whereas when something airs like in a rerun or a show gets syndicated, like you would get a check in the mail. And so that's another thing that IATSE is focused on for the workers that are involved in streaming projects. It's like, how does their pay correlate to writers who are, or not writers, but workers who are on, networked shows or more traditional types of media? Because it's always, these streaming services are making so much money, but they're trying to squeeze out as much as possible from the workers without adjusting accordingly. Like, we're making you millions upon millions of dollars. This is not like new media anymore. So it's just about like recognizing that.
So from what I've seen, so there is no strike yet. It's just the authorization has passed. So discussions are going on right now. From what I was reading, I read something in some high-profile newspaper. I don't remember if it was the New York Times or some other thing, but the coverage was like, it's going pretty well. No need to be alarmed about your little shows. Are you optimistic that the demands are going to be met on this? It's a really big threat, 60,000 striking workers. So if I were on the other side, I would probably just give you what you want.
I think, if we did strike, it would halt every production. It would halt almost every production that's ongoing right now. It would halt future productions from going on. It would halt any, writer's room production office, physical production that's going on. So it would have huge implications for the industry. Do I think that the demands are going to be met? I wouldn't say I'm optimistic, just because I know how much of a fight it is to get adequate working conditions and pay for workers in any industry, from, you had the writers strike to you had the teachers strike. So there's so many different, people who are just fighting for like decent conditions, that it doesn't seem like those demands are being met until they, speak the language that the people can understand, which is often the language of action. And so I feel like that might be the case, but I do also see a lot of key players in the industry standing up for IATSE and voicing their support, because they don't want the strike to happen either. So
do you think the strike is more likely than not at this point?
I don't know if I'm informed enough to say. I'm not at the negotiating table, so I can't really get a sense of like, really how it's going, other than like the messages that we're all getting, which is like, keep calm and don't freak out. And, so aside from that, I'm not entirely sure what the next step is. I just know that no matter what happens, we're ready to stand with each other.
A bunch of the guests we've had on here before have been PAs. I've done PA work. In the Alex Press article in the New York Times that came out today, the article begins with a guy who's in the union now, and it starts with, as a PA, he would work 40 hours straight with no room of advancement or whatever. And then it'll quickly jump to, but in the union, things looked better. Is there ever any talk of unionizing PAs? This is something you hear around every once in a while, but it's just with everybody else at the bargaining table right now, there has to be a lot of people who are like, how come I'm the one person excluded from this conversation?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I started out as a PA before I became a writer's assistant. And back when I was not unionized, everything was so much worse. So it's really like, I was thinking like the fight that they're having now. And then I was thinking back to like, a year or so ago when I was a PA, being like, well, my life is so much better now that I'm actually in the union. So the things that they're asking for now, like I wouldn't even have thought to ask for back then. It's like, you're just, and it's, I'll just say this, like when you're working in this industry, when you get started and these jobs are expecting you to have a degree from like a known film school, they expect you to have a place to live in LA. They expect you to have a car because as a PA, you're driving around all the time. And they're paying you minimum wage. I don't know how they think that they're squaring that circle.
It kind of seems like it's like an apprenticeship system. Like, look, we all had to do it. You work as a PA for 3 years, and we ask you to pick up poison on the ground with your hands and hold up traffic. And if you survive, we'll give you a better job later. But that kind of like back alley spit handshake agreement does not hold up in modern times, so it's like only a matter of time before this falls apart some way.
It also kind of reminds me of in like neoclassical economics, there's like this idea that a certain amount of people need to be unemployed as like the reserve army of labor, and that's like kind of almost how PAs are in the entertainment industry. Like you have this sector of people that you can always dump worse stuff onto them. So if and I of course support IATSE, but if there are concessions, then there's a possibility that there's just going to be more work and crap dumped off on people who are not union.
Well,
yeah,
you could go down
true.
a rabbit hole thinking about that, though, and then go, well, okay, what if we work this out to where it includes PAs, but then it pushes the surplus reserve thing out into just workers in other fields that then serve as the moat that you swim through to get into film work and stuff like that. And you follow that rabbit down the hole, eventually you're just going to come to a conclusion that is we're not allowed to say on the podcast.
Yeah. No, like I think in basically all situations, more unions are good, and hopefully that this will, have a galvanizing effect on the industry at large. And like, we've known people who have tried to start organizing PAs, and I think just having strikes or the threat of strikes gets people in that position to see their own power. So I think it's a good thing.
Right. This is exciting, not just because, like, we're tangentially in media. Having a podcast is a form of media. That's cool. I've worked on a film set. The strike is cool for that reason. But, I mean, the real reason this is exciting, there aren't that many big unions left in America. For a union of 60,000 people to threaten a strike is, like, one of the big plays we got left. Hopefully get some kind of energy going off the ground here. How do people feel about it on the ground? Like, how's the state of the men?
Yeah, I mean, people are. This is an exciting thing, like you mentioned, because not only is this one of the last large unions that really exists, but this is a completely unprecedented thing in entertainment in Hollywood. Like, this would be one of the largest and most disruptive strikes that the industry has ever seen if it does happen. And so, I'm also involved in DSA and Hollywood labor, and there's a lot of crossover with IATSE members. And people are, excited about the demands being met, or they're excited about showing action to stand up for themselves and to stand up for their colleagues and their fellow workers. And either way, this, I think, is a good thing in terms of, like you were saying, a galvanizing effect. And just showing people that you can ask for better conditions, you can demand better, which we haven't done before. And, for people who are just starting out or people who are not in the union, I think this is something that they can see where they can be like, oh, these people are demanding better for themselves, so I can too. And, in a collective way, not in this like weird individual way of like, oh, know your worth. But it's like, yeah, we all collectively can know our worth.
Yeah, this alongside whatever we get past of the PRO Act happening at once is a little handshake. I hope it it works out. Any last questions we want to get to before we round this out?
I have a question. If the strike happens, how am I going to watch my little shows? How is this going to affect my little shows that I need to pass the time while I'm working from home during the unending pandemic?
Maybe this is I think if the strike happens, I think a lot of people might turn to their little podcasts if the little strike happens.
Right into our hands.
Unless we go on strike.
Right.
We've
authorized.
Anders, if you strike, I'm sending Pinkertons to your house.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to leave it there for now. Neda, thank you so much for coming on. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on my website, which is nedadevarpanah.com. That is NEDADAVARPANAH.com. There you can find some writing that I've done, my acting that I do. You can follow me on social media, which is all linked through my site.
Great.
We all got to go to this site. This is a wonderful place.
It's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Usually when I do my podcast, I'm sending that message to people where they're like, ooh, I have to accept the recording. And I was just on the other end of it. So it was really just a nice role reversal.
How does it feel? Waiting in the waiting room. No agency.
I feel like, I feel like undercover boss. But like a lot less toxic, I think, than that.
Yeah, they should do an undercover boss with Dave Portnoy. He inspects all the Barstool Sports podcasts.
Right.
Oh, is that who that is? I was like, I don't even know who that is.
They have him pretending
that makes sense.
to you call him daddy, but it's like just a joke to him. For him to even be daddy for a second.
Him, period. I don't know. I have no interest in Barstool. Not my brand.
Well, we're gonna cut that out. They're kind of a big part of our listenership. We're back in the show.
They're our sponsor. Really. They're our sponsor.
Oh, hilarious. Oh, it's that whole like one podcast sponsoring another that's so popular these days.
It's a mentorship program.
Hey,
well, no one
who's not union Barstool Sports, but you know who is? IATSE, which is a union.
Good point.
That's how we're starting this.
Seamless.
Yeah.
Andrews has decided no more banter. I'm segueing us into the thing we're talking about.
I just saw it and I picked it up and turned it into one of my famous segues.
Okay.
No one could blame you.
You're doing a really good job. Here to talk about the nitty-gritty of life in the YAHTZEE world, we have host of the Straight Guys podcast, famous comedian Kate Zasowski. Welcome to the show.
Wow, famous comedian. I've never been introed like that with also a saw in the background.
The saw is just, I can't do anything about it. There's going to be a saw today because it's the labor episode.
It makes
We're on
sense.
the set of Saw 7, and that is the saw.
There's got to be more than that by now. Are there only 7?
I think it's on the
11.
Is it?
Is Chris Rock going to be in all of them from now on? Is he like tied to the franchise?
He was the latest one? Yeah, he plays a cop.
He was the star. He's a cop who hates being murdered.
Oh shit! I mean, I gotta catch up. I'm so far behind. I think I've only seen the first 5.
Wow, only the first 5. What are you doing with your life?
Slacking.
There are saws to see out there, and you need to see those saws. And that's why we are podcasting about the film industry today. I can't do this. I can't segue as well as Anders. What the hell are we talking about, boys and non-boy?
Famously a non-boy.
Host of the Straight Guys podcast. Kate is a writer's assistant. We wanted to talk about what it's like being a writer's assistant and how much they let you sleep.
For sure. So I would say writer's assistant job, at least in my experience, it's less the lack of sleep problem. I think that's more crew members who are actually on set, camera ops, lighting, grips. I'm not usually on set. So for me, it's more of a wage issue usually. But I also, of course, want the crew members who are working these 16-hour shifts to have longer shifts. That is insane. And a lot of them don't get lunch breaks. It's madness, you guys. It is absolute chaos.
As I think I'm on the record for this podcast, if you pass a film crew, there's no way of knowing who can get access to the crafty table. So you should steal from those if you can. That's the way they're eating lunch, and it's the way you should be eating lunch.
Mm-hmm. But so that's a huge deal, is that, a lot of these like camera workers, lighting people, they're not allowed to take a break to eat from said crafty table. So there are simply fruit snacks just sitting there uneaten.
How do they throw a lot of them away? And it's a big fucking disgrace.
Oh God.
Like
it's
have you ever seen like an entire table of pineapple just thrown into a dumpster? Because it's upsetting.
God. And
what set are you on where there's pineapple?
I was working on SpongeBob.
Is it a porn? Is it a porn set? Because they want the ejaculate to taste
Pineapple
good.
Express is the answer. I'm sorry, we're all wrong.
Ah, okay.
He lives in the pineapple under the sea. They had to throw it in the trash. And then it goes into the sea. We were actually filming it. It was a great use of pineapple.
That's disturbing because there's a massive homelessness crisis in the Los Angeles area.
Really?
And they're just tossing away food that could be given to people who need it. But everybody needs food, obviously. How do people on set who don't have time to eat, do they just like wolf stuff down when no one's looking? Or like, how is it even done?
Good question. Actually, this was one of the issues that came to the front recently. So basically, IATSE, in these current negotiations, they are arguing for 3 main issues, and that's a living wage, reasonable rest, and basically the way we're paid with streaming, because the studios are arguing that streaming is still a quote experiment and they still don't know how to make money via streaming. which is very funny because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of these shows on streamers are winning Emmys and are some of the most popular shows on TV right now. So they are just paying unbelievably low wages on these shows, which is obviously absurd. So where was I going with this? What was the question? How do they eat?
How do they eat?
When IATSE came forward with these issues, the studios came back and said, well, actually, we haven't made a lot of money during COVID. So we're going to take those issues and say no, but we are going to take away the penalties for when you miss a meal break. So right now they don't even lose money if that's what the studios are coming back and saying. We're not going to lose any money if we don't pay our crew. So when do they eat? I guess on the drive home, on the way there and on the drive home, in the bathroom, maybe. I don't know. It's absurd. It's insane. People will drive home and die because they haven't had enough sleep and they'll just get in a car accident.
Or maybe they're eating and driving, which is not illegal, but is bad driving etiquette.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say one time I spilled Hawaiian food all over myself while driving. So that is
Could
true.
be a worse type of food to spill on yourself.
Wait.
It was terrible. Going back to pineapple. I mean, really, there were pineapple chunks.
The word of the day is pineapple.
Yeah, what is this, an improv show? Improv 101? Truly pineapple chunks all over the front of my Corolla.
I can't believe we're eating pineapple on 9/11.
Oh,
I just
hilarious.
Improv.
Yes, and
Oh.
I'm running in front of the podcast, ending the scene.
I have a gun. You're not supposed to do an improv, right?
Yeah.
Thing.
Unless you're Michael Scott, which is
okay,
such a brilliant. So they say they haven't made money yet from the streaming, but they're certainly spending a lot of it on all kinds of things. But living wage not considered as an expenditure, I guess. Like,
yes, they think they can pay crew. So in my jobs, so I live in LA where the cost of living is very high. I've worked on shows where I make $600 a week to be a full-time writer's assistant. And this is like more than 8 hours a day. Like I'm there from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. some days. And $600 a week is not okay. So every job I've had while I've been out here, I've always had multiple side jobs, multiple side hustles. But for people with families and kids, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Because also you have to remember, these shows we're not on gigs 52 weeks out of the year. Some shows might be a few weeks long. Some might be a few months long. So we're not even getting minimum wage over the course of a whole year.
The crazy thing about it too, and we were talking about this before you came on, is like people will kill somebody to be a writer's assistant. Like they're coveted jobs.
It is a hard job to get, but it pays shit.
Right. What other, like, and I have a like medium idea of why it's hard to be like a set worker when you're on set. Like, what are the downsides to being a writer's assistant people don't know about?
The downsides. I mean, the pay is a huge one. Another big thing is just that you are an assistant. So even though writer's assistant is thought of as like the jumping point to a staff writer where you start making the big bucks, when you are a writer's assistant, you are still very much looked down upon, talked down to, sometimes emotionally and mentally abused, just treated in not so great ways by sometimes the showrunners, sometimes some of the upper level writers. I'm lucky that a lot of the writers I've worked with have been incredible and are still some of my friends today. But there's a lot of unchecked power that can happen. And I have not technically been a script coordinator. Well, I kind of was on one show. They just didn't title me that, funnily.
Well, is that
and did not pay me for it.
Do you do a lot of work that you're just technically doing the person above the line's work? And
yes. That happens all the time on these huge shows. They're pinching pennies, trying to get away with as much as they can. But I have not been a script coordinator on a scripted show, and they a lot of times have to stay up till all hours of the night waiting for the writers to send them the script so that they can distribute it to the rest of the crew. So sometimes they're up till 2-3 a.m. On any day of the week, just waiting till they can send that script out.
Damn.
Yeah. Let's go back to food for a second. I keep reading about this
Let's go
meal
back.
penalty thing. Like, instead of giving you time off for lunch, they can give you like a weird stipend for.
No, so the meal penalty situation is normally the studios would have to pay a penalty if they don't give crew a meal break at a certain time. But studios were saying, we're going to take that away because we haven't made enough money during COVID. So we're not going to negotiate with you. We're actually going to fuck you over more.
Oh, yeah, that
which is a
seems
huge
like
reason this strike might be happening.
that seems like a totally fair thing to cut out of the budget. Fuel for humans to exist.
If I didn't,
And it's really
if I didn't get
Oh, go
lunch,
ahead.
I'm just saying, like, no matter how much penalties are happening, I would probably be upset forever.
yes. Yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. It was almost like a symbolic middle finger more than anything, I think. But I think it was a really bad move on their part because a lot of the way the crews in Hollywood are treated, I don't think most of the public knows. I think a lot of the public is still under the impression that, oh, if you work in Hollywood, like you're very privileged, you make a lot of money. But things like this, where it's like, oh, we're not even giving our crew members food, like that's a real nugget of news, a real intense headline that any person would be shocked by and horrified by. So I think the studios are really screwing up, basically.
It's sad. It's sad to watch them do it.
Yeah.
It's
It seems like there's
it's
this
not good.
like I think we've touched on this a couple of times already today, but like there's like, because you do get people when you're on the road doing stand-up and you're in a state where Hollywood doesn't exist, you know, and they're like, oh, well, somebody will tell you, I wish I could move to New York or LA and go work in movies. Oh, boo-hoo, cry me a river about working.
Yeah,
in
it
or
seems
whatever.
so glamorous to people.
Yeah.
But it's really only glamorous if you're one of the top head honchos.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that somebody might say like, well, you know, you're complaining about how hard the job is, but it's a job you don't necessarily need to be working and et cetera. And of course, it's going to be that hard to get into a job where the payoff is something as glamorous as, you know, the lottery that you're trying to win, getting to the top and getting that staff writer's job or whatever. But that doesn't mean that this is fair or set up in a way that is economical at all. And also more and more, you know, this is becoming what our economy is. Like, we don't really make shit anymore. We just make fucking movies and stuff like that. And it like, I guess what I'm getting at is there is this like internship kind of nature to it where everyone just like shakes their finger at you and goes, well, you know, you have to live in your car and or be born rich or whatever in order to make it through this, because that's fair. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, that argument doesn't make any sense. It just,
right.
It's not fair at all. It just is set up a certain way.
And I hate that mentality because I've worked on many shows, some where the showrunners were abusive, some where there were casting couch scenarios, some where
I'm sorry, what is a casting couch scenario?
Andrew,
you have to know
couch,
this. You have to.
Do you not know?
I'm
Or is this
asking
for
on
listeners?
behalf of people who may not.
On behalf of listeners. So that's a situation where someone at a higher level offers a position on a show or movie in exchange for sexual favors.
Oh,
that's what it.
This is a category of porn, Anders.
See, where I come from, they call that a casting bed scenario.
They call it right. They do things proper back in the heartland.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that sounds a lot more morally sound, I think.
There's
a lot less confusion when you go into cast for a part and they're like, welcome to my bedroom. We're going to be going over a lot of your lines. I hope you get
right
it.
on top of that. Yeah, it's so all that to say, I have been in some very, very toxic work environments, and I've been in some great environments where the hours are fair and everyone is treated well. And guess what? At the end of the day, we make a TV show. We play pretend. We make something that people can watch and enjoy. So the fact that it's tolerated sometimes is bullshit because it's not necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
If that
makes sense. Right now, you know, Hollywood likes to sort of pitch itself as sort of the cultural vanguard of like social justice, which, you know, obviously representation and stuff like that is important, but is that kind of a sheen in some ways covers up a very exploitative industry.
I think so. I mean, I've met all different kinds of people in this industry. I've met great people. I've met terrible people. It's like anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're never going to have all wonderful people or all terrible people. Which, yeah.
Have you ever met the Grinch?
Not yet. I would like to.
Showbiz is all about meeting big figures like the Grinch. What's the worst event you've had happen to you?
The Grinch is a total.
He's
a total casting couch guy. You don't want to get involved with.
Is he slunking over to it?
Yeah, I don't want to be involved.
Wait,
with
he's
that.
the one.
Those fingers.
He's the one giving the job or getting the job.
He's just in charge. He's the Grinch. We all know who the
He's
Grinch is.
Clearly a creep. Look at him.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's some people who are into that. I don't know.
Yeah,
no one is into the Grinch.
I mean, I'm into any consensual
this
activity.
Is a sex-positive podcast, and we're into consensual Grinching. If your thing is that one of you dresses up like the Grinch and does that creepy smile at your partner, but it's consensual, good for you. But
right. Well, one is the Grinch and the other one's the little dog.
Yeah.
And you ride the little dog.
You pull a sled full of.
Or you pull a sleigh. I guess he never rides. Max.
The Grinch could bottom. The Grinch could bottom if he wants
and
to.
He would, too,
Very skinny,
because he's always taking conventions and flipping them.
There you go.
That thing where his mouth curls into a smile could work in either way.
Right. And this is bigoted.
Christmas is a.
This is bigoted of me to say, but I don't think anyone should have sex with the Grinch. I don't care what the situation is.
It's popular. I remember last year there were all these sexualized drawings of the Grinch circulating online. Like people are into.
Really
I'm telling you,
now?
I am telling you, there's a big community.
A sensual Grinch.
People into him. I think it's something about the long fingers.
Well, he's very curvy.
He does have a big dump truck.
He is.
Yeah, like his entire body is like the Super S.
I mean, if
he is a fat ass.
Fingers are like that, yeah, just imagine a green, hairy Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Ding dong.
Also, like, we root for him. He went through this big emotional journey and came out with a bigger heart. Right. I mean, who doesn't want to fuck that? You know?
And now he can actually have sex without having a heart attack, because before it was dangerous, to get throttled.
If your heart is too small, any cardio is kind of off limits for you.
Yeah.
If your heart has grown 4 sizes this year, ask your doctor whether Viagra is safe for you.
Yeah, it's not the only thing you can grow 4 sizes if you catch my drift.
And I do.
Oh my God.
My candy cane.
We have to make a Grinch porno where then it's like, and then it grew 4 and it does the whole.
You know that exists. 100%.
I mean, the Who's are they're made to be very attractive people.
Are they?
Is that
true? In a conventional sort of way. In a conventional sort of way.
I did not mean to bring up the Grinch for this long.
Okay. All right, discussion of Grinch over.
Tell us more about what's like one of the worst things you've seen on at your job?
Okay, so this is an insane story. It was not a writer's assistant job. I was a PA, an office PA at this place, a popular production company. And this woman who was not the head of the company, nor an executive, she was, I would say, like a mid-level manager. I'll call her Susan. So Susan was very pregnant and was very mean, which... I get you're going through a lot, but like, I'm not the one who got you pregnant. Don't take it out on me. Trust me and my girlfriend are trying. It's not working. But Susan one day came up to me and was like, I need you to go on a run and do this errand for me. This wasn't that crazy. I did lunch runs, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, sure. She was like, I am going to my nephew's birthday. He's 4 years old and I need wrapping paper. I need 2 different kinds of wrapping paper. They need to be dinosaurs, Disney, or trucks. So I was like, okay. She was like, go to the Rite Aid nearby. So I go to Rite Aid and I look for these 2 kinds of wrapping paper. The only Disney they have is princesses. She said it was a boy. I was kind of following gender roles here. I was like, I don't think she'd want this. So I got the next best thing. I got Paw Patrol and Emoji birthday.
Big with boys.
Everyone loves it.
Huge with boys.
Yeah.
Everyone. Emoji movie, huge deal. Sir Patrick Stewart, we love it. So I go back to the production company and I offer that to her and she says, I asked for dinosaurs, Disney, or trucks. And I said that they didn't have that. She said, go somewhere else.
Dear Lord.
So I proceeded to go to 8 different places. This took hours looking for these 2 specific kinds of wrapping, not even a gift. This wasn't even the gift for a 4-year-old. It was the wrapping paper to cover a gift. This happened years ago. And I swear to God, dinosaurs, Disney, or trucks is burned into my brain. I will never forget this. And I just remember driving around in LA traffic from like one Rite Aid to another, to a Party City, to a fancy wrapping paper store, just thinking, where have I gone wrong in my life? How has Susan taken a hold of my life in this manner? Where clearly there must be something better for me to do than drive around for hours looking for dinosaurs, Disney, or trucks.
Damn.
But I did finally find them at two separate locations. And all was
Dear
well.
Lord.
I guess.
Presentation is so key, and that's something you learn in this industry.
It was such a silly, stupid waste of time.
When
Did
you
she
went to the
pull the,
fancy like wrapping paper place, were they like, dinosaurs,
Yes!
get out of here?
No, they had dinosaurs. I got dinosaurs from that place, but they did not have Disney or trucks. So then I had to go to another place to get the
Of course
second
they
one.
did.
So there were 3 different papers you had to get.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
God.
2 different kinds.
Jeez, I bet I might get in trouble for saying this, but I bet she play the special needs parent card? Was she like, my son will have a meltdown if it's not one of these 3? He's on the spectrum.
It wasn't for her son. It was for a nephew.
Oh,
Nephew.
for nephew. Okay.
Everything is out the window now. Nephews
Yeah.
do not get special wrapping paper.
You do not go this hard for your sister's kid. Who gives a shit?
You don't.
That's
you
someone
don't.
else's child.
I don't know.
And they don't care.
I know. I will go on record and say
Yeah,
I hate that
fair
child.
And that child grew up to be
Harvey Weinstein.
The Grinch.
I don't know. That's good.
The Grinch. Yeah.
The Grinch.
The Grinch safer than Harvey.
That's
Yeah,
what would you do if the Grinch had taken all of those kinds of wrapping paper? You would have had to
Don't
invade
answer
his
that.
mountaintop.
Wow, we really
There you
connected
go.
that beautifully. It's like it was
Improv.
all
We did a
planned.
Herald.
That's kind of, yeah, that's gorgeous. That was a herald.
It seems like a lot. The base of every problem in this entire industry is the like master apprentice system. The entire thing is under, where whoever is one rung above you on the ladder has the control of life or death over your entire personality.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's fully so many power trips, which, you know, you can partially blame on the system, you can partially blame on the individuals, but I think the system should be used more to regulate said individuals, because people are out here just being crazy. And
Well, also,
we
like,
can't-
to make a
we can't.
galaxy brain anti-capitalist point about this, it just seems like everyone is sort of pulling the ladder up behind them as they scramble upwards into the more coveted seats, like the writers, staff writing jobs we're talking about and stuff like that, and the getting above the line or whatever.
Mhm.
So the only real way to get around that classically is like collective action, right? Organizing. Because no
Absolutely.
individual
Absolutely.
PA or whatever is going to have power to start that conversation. So this
Yes.
is probably go ahead.
Well, I was just going to briefly say, like, it is kind of bizarre because it is so much about power in a very arbitrary way. Whereas, like, with most jobs, bosses are ruthless and evil and mean, but it's about efficiency, right? It's because you're not doing the job efficiently enough, and they are trying to get you to that point to extract as much fucking, labor as they can out of you. Whereas here, it's just like the wrong kind of wrapping paper. It's about whims and just absurd little things, because you're making something that in a sense we all need, but we don't really need in the same practical way as people need, like food or a house or stuff like that.
I need The Circle on
All right.
Netflix. I don't know about you. I need my Bachelor of Paradise.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, maybe
Speak for yourself.
maybe yes, that's true. I will be reminded if the strike happens, how much things will be shut down, and I won't get my
It could happen.
yeah.
It could happen in days. I don't know if it's going to happen. After we voted, so there's 60,000 members in IATSE who were able to vote on the strike, and 52,000 voted, and 98% of them said yes to authorize a strike. So now they're back at the negotiating table, and it sounds like if it doesn't happen in a few days where they reach an agreement, we're going to strike. So it's never happened before. IATSE's never gone on strike in its 128 years.
Wow.
I was really happy they let the Italian guy win that first season of The Circle, because that guy on the reality show,
Joey?
he never wins. He never has what it takes to get to the winner's circle, but he just had such a pure heart. I follow him on Twitter. Yeah. He's like trying to leverage his circle fame into like a career, and he like can't do it. And it's heartbreaking.
We actually, Joey, we have a lot in common. We're from the same hometown. We're from Rochester, and then he worked at this. I think Joey's straight, but he worked at this gay bar in Studio City where they would do line dancing. It closed during the pandemic, which was heartbreaking to me. I know, because I really wanted to like go line dancing at that bar and get a drink made by Joey from The Circle, and I never got to live that dream. But he's great. I really enjoyed the first season of it.
Dream get for the podcast, Joey from The Circle, winner of The Circle.
Yeah, did you just get me because he wasn't available?
Yeah, you were number 2.
No, we're trying to get to him through you. This is called networking. I'm from Hollywood. I don't know if you know what that means.
Yeah, no, you get it. Well, I'm not going to help you because that is the whole message of this show, right? Hollywood people don't help each other.
That is exactly
That's not true.
Leverage.
We have a long list of people from Rochester we're going through.
Oh, for sure. Famously. You have just a garbage plate next?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, god damn. I love the way people eat out there.
Garbage plate is like, it's just great. Like a pile of shit, right? Like that's the dish. It's like meat and rice and stuff.
Pile of shit.
Like, well, there's no order to it. I'm saying that's the garbage part.
No, that is not true. That is not true.
Right.
That's what I've come to understand.
It's hamburger.
It's the order is important. You have mac salad and home fries first. That's the layer. And then on top of that, you do the cheeseburger patties or hot dog or grilled cheese. And then you smother it with ketchup, mustard, hot sauce, whatever you're fancy. But you gotta have your base level.
Yeah,
Alex. It's very important.
Society
Otherwise,
needs
it's
order.
Totally different. It's really just like when you think of a film set, how it needs order for everything to fall
Hollywood
into place.
It's almost like exactly the same
garbage plate. And
Hollywood is a garbage plate.
Everyone wants to be the sauce at the top. But in order for the sauce to exist, there are layers of hamburger patty and home fries and mac of some kind.
Yeah, so I am that mac salad trying to get up to that sauce.
Right. You start as a home fry for 3 years, then you get to be the chopped up hot dog, then you play your cards right, now you're Zendaya. Wasn't that exciting?
God, what I would give to be a chopped up hot dog.
Union effort.
Put me on the plate.
You know, organizing for better conditions in your workplace is like, like it's like making a stronger plate for the meal to exist on top of. But really, the end goal is, to even outside of this scenario, completely level out the order of things altogether, which would be visually represented by stirring the garbage plate together into one soupy mass.
No,
like you do.
Don't do that.
That just be chili.
Yeah, I don't know about the soupy adjective.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be like.
It shouldn't be soupy.
Not soupy. All right,
it shouldn't be
chose
soupy.
The word. It would be more like a chili or something.
This man is from Texas. He's operating on a chili agenda. He's infiltrating garbage plate discourse.
This is not a Rochester man that we are speaking
All right,
to.
okay. As we're wrapping up here, I did want to ask you before we go, what is the worst job on set?
Oh my goodness, the worst job on set. The fluffer. No, that's a low bar joke.
We'll explain that later.
Grinch again.
That's like cleaning
it's a great
stuff.
Joke. I'm better than that. I could do better than that. I don't know. Worst job on set. I really think it depends. I think it depends on the set. I've been on sets where the prompter people were made to cry by the showrunner. And we went through prompter person after prompter person because for some reason the showrunner fixated on them and really emotionally terrorized them to a degree that was very upsetting to me.
How do you make a prompter?
I just think, I think it depends. I think a lot of times PAs get a lot of shit because they're usually the first ones there and the last ones to leave. And they're oftentimes the people who get no sleep and get in car accidents. And it's very horrible.
We said this
But
on the other part of the show, but this is the first step of the fight in unionizing PAs. We're doing it. We're going to make it happen.
Yeah, because they're not part of IATSE. Actually, writers' assistants and script coordinators weren't part of IATSE until very recently. So I do hope that PAs will be next. Why not? Bring more into the fold. You know?
Of course. It does seem like, in any workspace, there's going to be people with power that then have power trips about that, but there's like a specific flavor of it when it comes to theater people that seems extra not fun to get yelled at.
Again, is there a single show where people deserve to die to make that show? People are dying to make Emily in Paris, not theoretically speaking. Yeah, when you think about it, it's pretty traumatizing. SpongeBob, people might be dying to make SpongeBob.
What a horrible reality we live in.
I know, it's insane. It's when you think about it like that, it's truly like, what are we really doing here? And I love working in TV. Like I'm going, to that person who said, well, why do you have to work this job? No one's telling you to be there. Okay, well, no one's telling you to enjoy TV and movies either, but you want to.
You're addicted.
Some people have said that The Simpsons has saved us from nuclear catastrophe because it popularized the idea that power plants are run shoddily and made Americans more skeptical of them. I don't know, though. Before our listeners who are pro-nuclear get mad and yell at me, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the best thing I could think of.
I did just work on a show where the Simpsons writer ran the show, and it was so smooth. And those guys, I mean, they're like a well-oiled machine at this point, So he ran this show with the best hours I've ever worked, best pay I've ever gotten. It is possible.
We want to run the whole thing like a Simpsons.
You got it. I mean, there's a reason it's been on the air for so long,
That is a good point.
Because it's the king. All right. Well, that's going to round us out for now. Kate, thanks so much for coming on. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on the socials at Kate Zasowski, Twitter and Instagram. And I post about stand-up shows on Instagram. And check out my podcast, Straight Guys. It's me and Caitlin Reese, who's also a comedian, and we roast straight and gay culture. We've had a lot of queer guests on the show, so it's a lot of fun.
No one is safe.
No one is safe. Yeah, watch out. You guys are next on our next What the Fuck Straight segment.
Would you call the Grinch a part of straight or gay culture?
Ooh, that is such a good question.
We have that written down.
Could he be like a Babadook type thing where the more you think about it, you're like, he is kind of queer, isn't he?
He really could be a queer icon, I will say. I mean, his heart grew. He really accepted himself in a way. He's really part of the whole It Gets Better story that so many young queer people experience. And now everyone wants to fuck him. And that's kind of my experience as a queer person. Okay. Suddenly all the ladies knocking on my door.
Right. If your heart grows, it means you're more open to different types of love.
There you go.
More confident.
Yeah.
There's a real taboo for Christmas in the queer community. I've heard that.
Is that true? Mm-hmm. A taboo for Christmas? What does that mean?
Christmas is kind of the source of a lot of intolerance. It's the source of societal norms. And to be the Grinch, to be the construct of the being who's anti-Christmas is actually a rebellion in its own sense.
He's anti-trad.
I mean, I could see how Christmas...
Right.
I could see how Christmas is triggering for a lot of people because you relate it to Christianity, you relate it to family, who a lot of queer people do not have a strong connection with, a good connection with. So I could see that. I mean, I just think of Christmas as I get presents,
that actually
cookies.
That's a big part of it.
I'm one of the lucky ones.
That does
That's
kind
privilege.
of work as a metaphor. So it should be the Grinch queers Christmas.
Interesting.
I would watch the shit out of that. I would work on that.
Well, no, because what the Grinch is doing is essentially sort of destroying the nuclear family.
Yeah, he's anti-trad. No, this totally works. You start off as a bit, but now I'm on board. I think it's real.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And now I do want to have sex with the Grinch. You've convinced me.
That's what this whole thing has been about. Anders, do you have any plugs this week?
Oh, we're doing plugs here. At Anders Lee here on Twitter, Dursley on Instagram. Check out our Patreon, where we just did a fun ep about the history of another queer icon that the entire queer community loves universally, Kirsten Sinema, Arizona senator.
Another Grinch-like figure.
Right, Grinch-like figure.
Okay, do not do that to the Grinch.
Right.
He deserves better.
Grinchton Cinema, more like.
It is like that.
Yeah, she was a Green Party organizer in the early 2000s and anti-war activist, and we go into that history. A lot of fascinating stuff there.
Was she?
She was,
and then she went to this.
Yeah, and she was she was an actor, actually, apparently a talented actor in a play about circumcision while she was running for city council as a Green. So we go into that history. Check out our Twitch stream as well. Jake and Alex do a little gaming on Tuesdays, right?
Tuesdays at 9.
Yes, and I am going to at some point. I haven't figured out the day of the week yet, but I'm going to start doing an unauthorized NFL chat stream. And of course, they just announced this, but football is gay, and so we're going to be celebrating.
That's huge.
It that way.
That's huge for me.
Yeah.
This is an upset for football. Follow me on Twitter at Patak Test Kitchen, and your exciting one-stop shop for new flavors. I put all my things on there. Movie of the week. I watched Pulse last night. The Japanese horror movie. That's mine, because it's all about what if people were shadows on a wall. Wouldn't that be frightening? And it's October. It's frightening.
Very cool. My plugs are everything that we just said. Check out our Patreon. We have merch for sale. We have a really cool poster I made if you came to or saw our 9/11 show. I am doing stand-up on Fest in Gainesville at the end of the month, Halloween weekend. If you're in that neck of the woods and you're into pop punk and all that shit, I just was able to announce it. So check it out. Come see me at Fest. There's still tickets available. I was searching my Netflix interface for the last 10 minutes to try to answer the question, what is the TV show that requires people to justifiably shed blood and die for, to try to find a good answer. And I think what I landed on is Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness needs to get made. Remember he's back. They made a second show that no one watched. Or Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Die for Jerry Seinfeld if you're a PA. The world needs to see him interviewing.
What's the deal with my altar of blood?
The way he talks to just like servers in that show, serving him coffee,
sucks.
It's like on camera.
He's drunk on power.
Yeah, imagine what he's like off camera. That's terrifying. We should also ask: is there a way for listeners to support IATSE in some way? Are there strike solidarity funds or anything people can do at all?
There are funds for people who've had issues paying their dues to be an IATSE. Let me think. You should follow IA Stories on Instagram.
We'll find something.
They post a lot of resources. It's I think it's IA_stories on Instagram. They've gotten really huge recently, posting people's experiences who are in the union, and lots of resources, information, ways people can help and show support.
Okay, well,
rock and roll.
Okay. I was going to yell at Anders for interrupting my plugs, but then I realized how much more important the thing that you guys are talking about is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished. My bad.
But now we should end the podcast because it makes no sense momentum wise to go.
You can edit.
This is all falling apart. Oh, no. It's all falling apart at the end.
My movie of the week is Only Lovers Left to Die. It's a great vampire film. All right, now I'm finished. You should watch it.
And it's finished.